Okay, so hopefully that should be all right. For those of you that don't know, I'm Martin. I lead the computing here at NCA. I've been teaching here for this is my 6th year now, doing Key Stage 3 all the way up to Key Stage 5. Over the last couple of years, I've been getting involved with primary schools a lot more through Barefoot, which we'll talk about today, through CAS, obviously, which is the main reason that we've got this community up and running. Wendy has come from CAS, she's one of the outreach managers who helps me do my job with these sessions, gives us a load of freebies that she managed to pick up, and has got a lot of knowledge about what's going on, a lot more knowledge about what's going on at the top of the organisations than I have as well. So I think Wendy's going to start with doing a little bit on what's going on with the NCCE, explaining what that means and what have you, and then I'll talk about some of the other roles that I can do to help primary schools and that kind of age, as well as some of the old ones, because I think, Joe, you're a little bit older, aren't you? You're also a little bit older than primary school, but we can see how that twigs in. I'm sure you can give some input as to where you think it might fit in for you guys as well.
Please feel free to ask any questions, because when I go around to the different communities, so I'm the outreach manager for communities in across London and the east side of England, and I don't want to assume that you know anything necessarily about the National Centre yet. So I go to different places and some people know about some of them, so forgive me if I'm telling you things that you already know. But I'm going to start from the beginning, it might be easier. So yes, welcome to the Mildenhall community. It's really lovely to come up here. I haven't been to Mildenhall before, so it's lovely to actually come up here and meet you. I was, just to give you a bit of background about myself, I was a primary school teacher for 20 years and quite heavily involved in the computing side in my own school and in CAS, where I used to lead the community, and then I took on this role back in last year. Well, last academic year, still speak like a teacher, and I'm now doing this full time. So it's a really exciting time actually to be part of Computing at School and the National Centre. But I'm just going to explain, for those of you who don't know what these things are, give you a bit of background into them. So the NCCE, as it's known for short, the National Centre for Computing Education, was set up about a year ago now, and so we are in year 2 of a 4-year investment in the government, and the thinking, the vision, if you like, behind the National Centre was that every child in every school in England could have access to a world-leading computing education. So that's where we're headed, okay, with this. As you can see from the bottom of the slide, actually, the National Centre is a consortium of 3 organisations who work together. So I work for the BCS, and we lead on the Computing at School and the community side of things, which is the teachers coming together like yourselves to support each other in the teaching of computing. We have STEM Learning, which is a well-known organisation, and they are leading on some of the courses. And I'll point you in that direction in a minute, that you can access, and they're also developing a resource repository. They've released some of the materials, and there's a slide on it coming up, but it's really worth looking at, because when it's finished, it's going to be a scheme of work, a complete free scheme of work with homework and everything in it, running from Key Stage 1 to Key Stage 5. We've never had that. Lots of teachers ask for that, and it will be quality assured as well. So everything that's coming out of the National Centre is quality assured. We also work in partnership with Raspberry Pi. Have people seen the Hello World magazine? Have you heard of it? Do you subscribe to it? Okay, please take a copy. I bought some today. Did you know that you can get this for free? Every teacher in the country can subscribe to it for free. You can get it delivered to your home. You can get them delivered to your school. And it is, yes, absolutely.
Got 4 coming here.
Yes, get some for your staff room, because it is the magazine to keep in touch with everything that's going on with technology, and it's fantastic because it's a way of engaging with other teachers across the country and different organisations, you know, learning from them and just finding out what's happening, the latest news. So think it comes out quarterly, but it's worth.
Yes, yes. I think there's been a couple that are doing it monthly as well, so it seems to come out more regularly recently.
Yes, so do subscribe to Hello Wellbeing magazine, but that's produced by Raspberry Pi. They also do the Pi Academy, but they're trying a version of it at the moment called, get this right, I think it's called it's Pi Academy Bytes. It's the wrong word. Pi Academy Bytes. So it's basically a shortened version of the Pi Academy training. So keep a lookout for that, and I'll let Martin know if that's happening.
So there's
more
some,
locally.
because obviously Raspberry Pi is Cambridge based, so
Yeah.
I went on one over the summer actually, to the Raspberry Pi offices in Cambridge.
Yes.
So they're doing a few around there, so if I do hear of actually events running there, I'll make sure I share those out as well.
Yeah, and they're also looking to, because obviously they produce the Raspberry Pi as their main device, but they're actually looking into working with the Chromebook because it's more appropriate for primary. So that's really exciting to hear about that. So there'll be more on that to follow, I think. So what is the National Centre? Well, I've told you who makes it up, because you can't actually go there. If you would say, where is the National Centre? There's not actually a place you can go to, because it's obviously run from 3 different sites. And as you said, Raspberry Pi is up this end in Cambridge, and BCS and STEM are Swindon and London based. But together, we're working together to provide many free resources. So I'm going to introduce you to some today that you could be using in your school. There's training, online training and face-to-face CPD. And to access that, you need to be signed up to teachcomputing.org, and that is the National Centre website. If you have a STEM learning login, then you'll find when you go on there, it's the same, and that will work because obviously the Teach Computing website is being run by STEM. So we've just completed the first year, and the second year is even more exciting because you may have heard that there are going to be these computing hubs, a bit like the maths ones they have, which are kind of these regional centres of excellence. And you have one West Suffolk. West Suffolk, I think, is your closest one. I'm actually going to a meeting in London tomorrow where we're going to be partnering up these communities with the regional hubs, and lots more will come through in terms of training and conferences and, you know, on more of a regional level as they begin to take shape. They're launching, some of them are launching now, they officially launch in January, but some of them are launching early. And this is a massive change in the sort of way that we're approaching youth education, so that's really exciting. So computing at school, I'm just going to go through this quickly because I'm sure you know more about computing at school, because otherwise why would you be here? But computing at school is a volunteer organisation. Thanks, Martin, for doing this, for setting this community up. Because it's all led by volunteers and it's run by teachers for teachers, and it's just that opportunity to meet once a term and just to share what you're doing, find out what's the latest developments, things that are happening, and staying in touch really. We also have the online community, which is really good and really useful if you have any questions. It's just on an evening, if you're sitting at home trying to plan a lesson and you want to find an answer to something, you can go online and post in one of the forums. Just to let you know that there is a new website. We're aware that the website at the moment is quite difficult to navigate and not as good as it could be. So there's been a lot of work gone into designing a new website. So hoping that will launch next year. But it's in the pipeline, and I'm excited to say that there will be a primary section and a secondary section, so it will be a lot more primary friendly. The corner for that as a primary person myself. So yeah, I think you'll see a massive difference when that comes out. So something to look forward to. So yeah, we have 32,000 members, and please encourage colleagues to sign up. It's free to sign up to Computing at School, and that's where you can find out about all the events, training, anything that's happening, conferences. So it's good, and you get like a weekly email telling you what's happening in your area. So it's a good organisation to be part of. And then together, you're beginning to sort of see how we're going forward with this. So the CAS communities will be linked into a regional hub. And as I said, it's just to strengthen the support that teachers can have by doing things on much more of a regional level, whereas in the past, it was more of a national level. And the change has come really because we've been given £84 million worth of funding from the government. And that's a massive amount of money to put into something specific, so specific, but they want the country to lead the way. And because we changed our curriculum sooner than other countries did, there's a lot of interest in this country. You know, we have lots of people coming over from different parts of the world, kind of watching what we're doing and how we're doing things here. So it's an exciting time to be involved in computing education. Okay, so I touched on this a few minutes ago, but this is more information about the face-to-face and online courses. So here it just gives you some examples of some of the courses that are available. All the online courses are free, so that's the first thing to say. Some of the face-to-face courses are free or low cost. There are bursaries available. It depends which type of school you work in. And the easiest way to find out is to go on there and just put the postcode in, because otherwise it's a bit of a minefield trying to figure out whether your school gets a bursary or not. So that's the easiest way.
Pretty much, if you're in the West Suffolk area, then you're guaranteed the bursary. I think we're all on the category 5-6 list that gets the bursary.
Well, then spread the word, because yeah, you are entitled then definitely to the bursaries, and you can also do some certification. I'll come on to that if you're interested in that. So the bursaries will cover like your supply cost. And the other thing to say is that in some of the London schools that I was in, if you were doing the training in your own time, okay, this is interesting how this works out. I don't know if it was because the people were part-time or what, but they actually, maybe they were using their PPA time to go to the course, I don't know. But what they did was they negotiated with their head teacher to actually be paid the bursary themselves, because they weren't using it in the school. And actually, in any other employment, you would be paid overtime. So it's a conversation for you to have your head teacher, but there's nothing to stop you receiving that money directly if you're not being released. It doesn't have to go to the school, so please bear that in mind.
I did one of the ones I did. I did Easter holidays.
Yeah.
So definitely, I think
if
you're doing it outside of regular school hours, then there's nothing to stop them saying.
No, and we're not, we're not advocating people doing extra things in their own time for free. You know, as teachers, you're busy as it is, as we know, there's a lot of demands. This is the resource repository that I was talking about. So it's organised into 10 core areas of computing. But it's really exciting, and it's worth going on there. And so this is on the Teach Computing site. Have a look and try out some of the resources. They have been tried out in schools and piloted, and they have been looked at, you know, by teachers for their comments before they were actually officially on there. But it's nice to see that the first set of lessons are already on there for people to use. And they will always be free, and they'll always be available. So there's nothing to stop you. If the scheme of work was something you're looking for, feel free to just lift it and put it straight into your school, you know, because as I say, they're quality assured materials. So.
Sorry, stupid question. Is that on the CAS website or NCCE?
It's on the NCCE. No, it's not a stupid question because it's a bit confusing, and this is the thing. It's on the STEM learning site, which is the main national centre, because they are the ones making the resource repository, because we're focusing on community. So that helps you remember.
But on CAS as well.
Yes, there are.
So they're just teachers putting what they use on there, and a lot of the cases you probably find they're adapted from someone else to put something on there as well. So there's lots of different versions that you can try out.
This is really worth doing if you want to get an actual certificate for your own professional development. It doesn't require a lot additional to what you're doing anyway. the fact that you're here, part of it is engaging with your local CAS community. So you kind of tick that bit, especially if you can get the bursary, because it involves a face-to-face course and an online course. So you're kind of following through the steps that you would be doing if you were taking the bursary anyway. So you might as well, you know, get the qualification if you like. So, and it's, as I say, it's a national centre. We used to run them, the BCS. So it's similar to, if you did that one before, it's similar, but because the national centres come into being, they've just changed who providing it. I'll just show you. So you can see this is the primary one. So the first thing you need to do is you register on the NCCE website. So that's teachcomputing.org. You then do it like a quiz to see which areas you need to develop. Don't worry if you don't know the answer to the questions, because that's fine. It's not to catch you out. It's just to actually see, you know, how we can help you. And then there's a 2-day face-to-face course, which we said should be funded. The online course, involvement with the CAS community, and you get the certificate. So it's worth doing. Please look into that. Did you say, sorry, you were secondary? Sort of. Okay, I'll skim over. I won't spend too much time on the secondary, but basically in the secondary we have 2 certificates. If you're teaching GCSE, I don't know if you go up as high as that. There is.
Joe's from the American.
Yeah, I work at one of the bases, so I'm familiar with.
Yeah, so they've got different.
A slightly different
so
system. Okay.
With the access to it.
No, fair enough.
Is as easy as schools outside as kind of. So that might be something for us to look at.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's worth asking the question. Absolutely, but if you have any contact with secondary teachers, do let them know about the accelerator course. So this is addressing an issue where there's a lot of secondary teachers who perhaps have been asked to teach computer and it's not their subject, or they've got a computer science degree that's out of date, and there's a course available that they can do. And then a similar version with the secondary computing certificate. There's also an A-level computer science program for anybody, again, if you know anybody who's teaching A-level, please, if you're like in an academy of schools or in a group of schools where you have secondary, please let them know about this, because
they are really good ask students to use.
Yeah, so this is basically a platform where there's lots of questions and support. It's just been released and it's amazing. So that's already gone live. Okay, back to primary. Barefoot. Is anybody using Barefoot in their school?
Trying to get me.
Okay, yeah. Have you had the workshop?
Yes.
Okay, so the workshop is free.
I'm one of the Barefoot ambassadors, and so I can do stuff. And I was
What
going to
can
talk
I
about that
say?
later.
Well, that's fine. I'll let you talk about it.
No, you're more than welcome to go ahead.
Well, we have. I did bring some information about it, which is here. But all the Barefoot resources are free. The workshops are run by volunteers, ambassadors, which is brilliant. And there's also, even if you've had the first workshop, the basic one, there's like a second version now.
To do one, 2 this year, I think. Maybe one start of January time, and then one later on as well for those that maybe haven't done the workshop first. So if you've done the workshops, I'll put some details out about when I'll do it. I'll probably get people to come here for someone from each school, and then they can go out and do the
really push that with your head with the teacher or the relevant person, because it's free, it's no cost to the school, and the whole staff can be trained and feel a lot more confident. The lessons and activities are amazing, and when I use it in my school, it's not set in kind of year group by year group, but you can kind of group activities together and literally lift it into your curriculum, and you don't need a lot of stuff. You don't need to go out and buy anything, is what I'm trying to say. If you've got B-bots, there's loads of activities with those, and lots of people have those from years gone by. A lot of the resources you can just print out and just do the lesson. And there's even SEND activities on there now, which is helpful. And a lot of the unplugged lessons are fantastic. You don't need any.
A lot of them I use all the way through. Like some of the resources that are there for primary school, I'm using for my sixth form students because they're that relevant and they are really good.
Yeah, definitely.
It's well worth incorporating.
And there's a whole new series that one of my colleagues, who's the one on the advert we were talking about earlier, he has produced some series of videos. It's called Over 100 Minutes. And but it's for people, for teachers who have started doing a bit of the new curriculum and feeling a bit more confident, but want the next stage really for kind of scratch and where to go next. So,
so that's what the next workshop is, isn't it? It's just focusing on that.
yes. So yeah, do have a look at that. The Quick Start Primary Guide. I bought some of these. So this is the primary one. Oops, yeah. The other CD falling out, but actually the videos that accompany this are on the CAS website, so it's worth looking at them because they are still relevant and actually really good. There's a transition one, which you might be interested in for your year 6 if you've got any high flyers, and then the secondary one here. They came out quite a while ago when the curriculum changed, but they're really useful to give to any teachers that are not feeling confident about what the terms mean, what they're meant to be doing. It's just a really good kind of reference handbook, if you like. So I've got plenty more in my car. So if you wanted to take a school step, I'll be more than happy to give those to you, because we want to get them out to the people who would benefit from them. Code Club. Has anybody run a Code Club? Have you heard of Code Club? Hey, so this is Raspberry Pi initiative as well. Code Club is fantastic. If you are asked as a teacher to run a club in your own time, after school or before school or whatever, lunchtime, this is perfect because all of the resources on there, the certificate, everything, you literally log in and off you go. It's as simple as that.
Stickers and the certificates and all sorts of things. It's all done for you.
Yeah. There's they've got lots of different units of work on there, Scratch and Python and all sorts. And the children can just work through. I used to always print the maths, which wasn't popular in my school because it was colour printing, which was Scratch. But you don't need to do that anymore because what you can do now, they've put the unit of work online, but it's really nice. So the children can kind of actually physically tick it off as they're working through. So it's not difficult to show them how to open one screen with the instructions and then the Scratch screen at the side. I did actually in EU COVID, went to Saffron Walden and we were doing a workshop with parents and kids on a Saturday. It was really good. And they got the hang of it really easily. It's not difficult. And it means that they can just work through, they can choose which project they want to do and decorate around the room, or you can use other students who are confident to support. I did that as well. But it's great, and it's aged 9 to 13. I would say year 3 upwards is fine. So it's definitely worth taking one of these leaflets, checking it out, starting a code club. You might find a parent who, or a volunteer in your area who might want to come in and do it, because actually you don't need any experience of coding at all to run it, because you just need to be enthusiastic and get it set up. Show them how to log in.
Yeah, alternatively, there is a way on the Code Club website where you can say you want someone to come in, and if there's a volunteer nearby, they'll come in and join your school, and then they'll run it.
Yeah.
They need a member of staff to be there as well, but they'll come in if there are any. And apparently there are quite a few around, obviously the Cambridge area, that might be willing to come to your schools as well.
My kids loved it. It was always really popular. It was like one of the most popular clubs. And I loved it because it didn't require any extra amount of my time, which we don't have as teachers. You just really don't have any spare time. That's just talking about. This is just, I'm going to whiz through this because this is more secondary. These are secondary resources. Next steps. Yes, this is just a summary, really. It just says about reminding you to join up and sign up if you haven't already signed up to the Teach Computing, which is the NCCE and CAS. Once you sign up to the NCCE, you'll get the newsletter as well, and it's really worth. It's really annoying when you get so many of these emails, company on company again. But actually, it's really worth reading that one because you're really kept up to date with what's happening. Also, are any of you on Twitter? I ask that question all the time, and always primary teachers go. And I never used to be on it. I will admit that I kind of was reluctantly, signed up for a long time. I thought, oh, I don't want another thing. But actually, it is kind of it's the best way to be kept up to date with what's going on, more than any of these other methods that I've told you, because things I've tweeted out of the National Centre and out of CAS like 20 times a day now. If you follow me, I keep retweeting everything that comes up. I mean, this meeting was retweeted, you know, the adverts that came out of the weekend. I also saw, because you would never find out, I saw in Piccadilly Circus, you know, they have the big screens. One of the Barefoot, like Martin, one of the Barefoot volunteers, it's a lady who has, called Susan Memmott, she's also a CAS leader, community leader, and she's done the most Barefoot workshops. I think she's done over 100 at least. And she was in London, I didn't know about this apart from today. She was in London and she was working with some kids on the street and they were programming the screens. It was amazing, and they videoed that. So BC are doing a fantastic job about raising the profile at the moment. But yeah, it's just, you know, something that just happened that I wouldn't have heard about if it hadn't been on there. So I encourage you to be brave and get on Twitter and just, you know, we also have CAS chats, which is on a Tuesday night. It's hashtag CAS and then chats. And every week from 8 till 9 on a Tuesday, you can basically go onto Twitter and there's some questions that come up and you can answer them if you want to. You don't have to, you can just watch what's happening. And it's really good because you always learn something that you didn't know because you're engaging with a much wider community of people. There are always people that are enthusiastic. Tonight's one is a Halloween theme and it's being led by one of the community leaders I know in London, it's Bradley. He's doing that. I led one a few weeks ago. I did a kind of time travel theme. But yeah, they're kind of fun, but also really useful as well. And I've always learned something that I didn't know by participating in that. Yeah, keep coming to these meetings and keep bringing people along. A new initiative that's, I don't know if you know about this or not, it's kind of in the pipeline. It changed this year. It's called CAS Out the Box. So we're working really hard behind the scenes at the moment. Basically, we're trying to make the meetings kind of tailored to what more, not saying they're not at the moment, but even more specifically to what teachers want, or what's the current thinking. So we're looking to produce a meeting, I mean, that's either spring or summer, which will be perhaps focused on computing with the new Ofsted framework. So it's really useful to what's current. And for the second, we're engaging with OCR and they can come and speak at a meeting, you know, about the changes in that. So we're just trying to engage, you know, get more teachers here and engaging with us and just making more really helpful. So that's in pipeline, that's hot off the press. So there's lots happening, there is lots happening. And of course, when the hub's launched officially, then a lot will come through that as well. Is there anything here that we should draw your attention to? That's just a summary about primary computing. So that's the National Centre leaflet. So please get one of those. Pens, landlords, he loves, you know, free stuff. If you want to advertise it to any other teachers that you're connected with and you want to explain what CAS is, please take one of those because it makes it a bit easier. Thank you. Yeah, if you have any questions, we'll try and answer them.
Has anyone got any questions at the moment?
We'll send. I'm happy to share the PowerPoint because there's a lot of information, and hopefully, you know.
Yeah, I just want a starting point to try. So I met Martin a couple of years ago, and after that, then did the whole Barefoot thing, got people in, started implementing, saying, right, I want this to happen, this to happen, this to happen. Then went off maternity leave for a year, come back and back to square one. Yeah, just wanted to work away. Yeah, it's like not happening.
Yes, well, I can also tell you that we've got a conference planned. How far is Saffron Walden?
Saffron is half an hour from here, yeah.
Perfect. So that's also one of the hubs. The hubs, a lady there, Katie Barefoot was leading, and I'm working with her at the moment to organise a conference, and it's going to be in June the 30th, I think, it's a Tuesday. We put it right at the end when everything's out of the way, so you can do really strong, hopefully. yeah, you'd have to negotiate a day's supply and cover out, but the conference itself will be free. No comment about that. It should be, yes, because we're funding it, some of it, and it's funding from other areas, and so yeah, do try and get that date in the diary and see if you can be there, because one, because it's close to you, and also because it will be a lot of the NCC, we call them facilitators, people running these training sessions, and you know, as I say, it will all be kind of quality assured courses and really helpful. And if you can get any other teachers there, be released, then bring them as well, definitely. But you know, if the way I would go back to a head teacher and present it, I would say, if you were to send me on an actual computing conference run by a company, you'd be looking at £200 to £300 just for the cost of the conference. This is free. You know, can we cover the state supply to go on this? You know, this is the National Centre. So yeah, it will be really good. So we're just busy looking up, you know, at the moment. So yeah,
it is really good. There's one I did at the University of Hertfordshire last year. I did some of the courses there because I'm one of the facilitators as well. I managed to get mine. I got my badge this morning, yesterday actually, which is quite good. And they are really good because there's just teachers sharing their ideas in a lot of cases, and then there's various courses going on as well. I'm assuming this will be very similar to that sort of thing.
They're really good. All the refreshments were really good as well.
That's
Brilliant.
me, sorry.
Nice day out. Yeah, it's going to be good food.
That's good food, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, we'll see if there is anything else that you can think of, then we'll come back to it. One of the things that I kind of want to share is Prim. Is something that I kind of stumbled across when I was teaching the program. It's just a way of going through and teaching it. I think I always used to use a kind of method like this, but about 2 years ago I kind of stumbled upon it. It's a lady called Sue Sentence and a couple of other ladies that kind of been doing a lot of research into how best you can teach programming. And I find that this works very well. They haven't done much research at the moment with primary schools, but I use it with year 7 and 8, and it can probably be used with some of the youngest students, or older as well, in the primary schools, I would imagine. But what it is looking at how they understand code before they then move on to making their own code. Because a lot of the Scratch resources especially is, here's some codes, or have a go at doing this, and there's not really that much behind what their code is actually meaning. So it's kind of going through this idea that they've got to look at reading code first, like with any English books and things, that they're encouraged to read before they can write. And that's that same idea with programming. Can you read the code? Can you understand the code before you then start to have a go at making your own code? So we start with giving them some code, and then they have to predict it. What do they think is going to happen? It can be going in cold, so some of my more able ones, I just won't tell them anything. I'll just give them some code and see what they can work out. Sometimes I might introduce the kinds of things that we're going to look at, and then they use kind of that understanding to try and have a more educated guess and hopefully get closer. But the key bit for me that I always drill down with my students when I'm doing it is, I don't care if you're wrong. It doesn't matter if your guess, your prediction is completely wrong from what actually happens. The fact that you're trying and you're looking at what's going on, because next time when you see something like that, you'll hopefully get it right. They then have to look at running the code. I take it a little further than some of the resources that Sue and the code have been doing, because I get them to actually write the code at that point as well. So I'll give them a screenshot of the code I want them to do. And if it's Python, I'll get them to type it in. If it was Scratch, I'll get them to actually drag and drop and put things in the right place. Mainly because I think it's really useful for them to actually give it a chance to put some of the code in. They're copying code really. And I think that copying helps them with the kind of the ideas of which orders the instructions need to go in. So that's one of the really important bits with it. Investigate is probably the most important part. Because this is where they're really starting to understand what's going on. It's looking at, were they right with their prediction? But then the more you can drill down with what's actually going on. So I tend to give them some examples of questions I want them to answer as I've done it. So it's not just, did this code work, or was the code, your prediction correct? Were you right? And it's obviously really good if they were right. But then I'll look at certain parts of the code and I'll say, well, what do you think this part is actually doing? Or why is it behaving this way? And sometimes the run code that I give them, I'll put a deliberate error in there. And so I'll focus on why that error is there and what it's doing. So it's just kind of giving me some things to think about rather than just putting a yes, no answer, which when I initially did it and I didn't have those questions in, that's what they were trying to get away with. But now that there's a kind of understanding as a developer.
I think that's what they find hardest as well.
Yeah. And along, yeah. So alongside that, I've got another kind of initiative that I'll talk about as well, which I think is really useful alongside it. Then we've got modifying, and modifying is literally just changing a bit of code. So I might get them to display a word as part of my run, and then I might just get them to change what they're actually displaying. So rather than displaying the word hello, I might say, right, change it so it displays your name. Just something really simple so that they're just starting to understand how they might be able to change it. If it's something more complicated, then I might get them to do obviously a few more changes to it. But it's just that idea of, okay, so here's a little bit of code and this is what you could then do with it. And then the make part is kind of the next step on. The make, obviously, they will have a task. Ideally, that's quite similar to what they've been looking at in the kind of prediction side and the modify side. But then it should be different enough that they're starting a new program, if you like. One of the bits I had a really long chat with Jane Waite, who was one of the other people behind this. It was about a year ago now. Because when we used to do it to start off with, one of the ways that I was looking to kind of differentiate and make it a little bit easier for some of our lower ability, especially, was kind of not removing some of the steps, but delaying some of the steps. And so our really low ability would just go through kind of the predict, run, and investigate initially. And then once they got the hang of just doing those three steps, I'd introduce the modify. And then once they got the hang of doing the modify, I'd then introduce the make. And when I was talking to Jane, she was like, well, actually, I think you should do a little bit more scaffolding, and they have to do all 5 steps every single time, or they have to get into the make side a lot easier, but just scaffold it and give them some hints and those sorts of things. And so I did a little bit of trial with that as well. And this year, I've kind of compromised in between the two, because I think with some of my students, especially the really low ability ones, they're really struggling with the make side of things. They can normally get up to modify. So this year I've kind of left it up to modify for those low ability ones, but they'll have maybe 4 or 5 up to modify, and then before they can move on to the next part, the next concept that we might look at, they then have to do the 4 make tasks that everyone else was doing as they were doing the rest of the print aspects, and that seems to be working a little bit more with some of them, and I'm including the scaffolding bits in there as well, and that's helping them out as well. So it's really useful, I think, just to have an idea of how you're going to structure it. And I think when you start to introduce Scratch, I probably wouldn't do it with too many of the others, like VBox and things like that. I don't know whether that would work as well, but definitely Scratch. I think it could, this kind of method would really work. So I'll just show you what I do with it. So we use something called OneNote. I don't know if any of you have heard it used at all. So I won't do the A-level one. So this is just a portal where I can manage all of their work, because obviously we do all our work on computers. I used to find it a right pain to try and keep hold of track of work that's on paper and some work that has to be on a computer. So they're doing videos or programming. There's no point printing it out because it doesn't necessarily look very good. So we've kind of got this tool that we use, and all of their work is on here. But what I do with this is just find. So this is kind of Prim in action and what we do. And I'll just zoom out a little bit so you can kind of see a little bit more of it. So we've got this kind of structure for it. They've got a table and all the exercises will be structured in this way. So this is the higher ability one, where they go through predict, they go through run. So I've given them some code. This is something called Flowgriffin that we're using. It's a flow chart that runs, which is quite a nice tool that I've found for teaching algorithms. We've kind of gone away from Scratch for us because I find that then they get to GCSEs and they just want to make games. And so this was something that was found, which was quite nice. And I think you could probably use it with some of the youngers if you wanted to, but so Scratch is perfectly valid to use instead. So where I've got my screenshot of the flow chart, you could put a screenshot of some Scratch code that you then want them to have a look at. And like I said, I get them to actually write out the code. You could give them files that they then just click on to run and see what happens. And I think that's what Sue and Jane tend to focus on from their resources. Then the investigate bit. So see, I've got a few questions in there that I'm trying to focus on. So this one was looking at loops. So I've looked at trying to target some questions based around those loops. The modify is very similar to what was going on. So it's looking to multiply the number by 2 before it displays it, whereas the initial one is just displaying it. So they've just got a very small change in there for this one as they're going through. And then the make part, we look at a new program, looking at trying to break it down. So those of you that have done Barefoot workshops hopefully will recognise some of the terms, abstraction, decomposition, and so on. And so we try and get them to think about it before they then actually make it later on as well. If they're doing something really simple, they might not necessarily need all of those steps, but as the solutions are more complex, then I think it's definitely worthwhile getting them to try and use some of those steps and show that they're using those terms, and the higher ability and even some of the lower ability, once they get the hang of it, will really start to benefit from it. Because I think one of the biggest problems is if they don't understand what the actual problem is, then it takes them a lot longer to understand what is going on, and they then can't code it. So the big focus at this stage is looking at what is it in English? What would you write in English to start off with? And once they've got that, and if they've broken that down well enough, it's just like using a French dictionary. You find the word in English, you look at what it is in French, and it's no different than that if they've broken it down well enough. And so trying to guide them through those processes and getting them to do that is really useful. And so you may have seen we've got a print poster that we're using all around the school, and it's right from year 7 all the way up. At the moment, the sixth form don't really use it too much because it's been fairly recently introduced, so they're a little bit resistant to change. But the year 7s, 8s, 9s, and 10s have really been receptive to it since we've introduced it. And I think it has made the understanding a lot better. And it's also helped our girls as well. That we're using this kind of structured approach. We've gone up to nearly 50% girls in computing since we started doing this, which is, I think a lot of it is because they can see the structure behind it and they kind of take it a little bit more seriously now. And so it's been really good. So our year 10 classes, we've got 14 out of 29 in there. The year 9 one isn't quite as good, but it's still in the high 30%. Which is I'm really pleased with. So I think it does seem to be doing something with it, which is really good as well. But then the other thing that I said I was going to talk about is we've got this thing that I've called a culture of error. And so these are the other parts, and this is where the debugging part comes in. See, the resilience for a lot of our kids, and I'm sure it's saying in most schools, is really, really low to start off with. And so what I've kind of developed is this idea of it really doesn't matter if you make mistakes. And a lot of the time I will reward the kids for making mistakes because they tend to learn a lot more from it. But to go alongside this, the really important bit with this is we've got an error log that they have to keep track of. And so every time they find a bug, whether it's one that I've put in there deliberately, like I was saying earlier, whether it's one that they've accidentally put in there, they have to record it in this diary, if you like. They put a screenshot of it, they describe what the problem was, and then the final column is what they did to fix it. So the next time they see that same error, they can go back and they can not use me, they've already fixed it before, so they can then hopefully fix it again. And that's another thing that I think has been really, really useful for them. And so I think, see, not necessarily for, like I said, the really young primary school students, it probably won't help, but I was at a school in Saffron Walden doing a barefoot workshop just before half term. And they were saying that actually they could use a version of this even with their youngest students when they're doing like debugging and bebop things. So I'm sure it could be adapted for younger students in there as well. So yeah, so that's kind of prim. One of our other schools, we're a multi-academy trust, calls it Prime instead. They've gone for Extend instead of the final M just because it fits in with their ethos. And so you may see different terminologies for the same sort of thing later on, but it is really good. I have got a handout which is a few slides from a workshop that Sue did. I think it was Reading Way.
Can I just say, Sue's coming to the conference.
Oh, brilliant! Even better.
We're trying to get her as the keynote. She said she's coming. Let's hope she's going to the keynote.
You said that. You've got to say, I've told everyone you're coming.
I've got confirmation this morning that she's definitely coming.
But it is really, really good. So yeah, so that's prim. I don't know if anyone's got any questions or anything they want to talk about with that. But like I said, I found it really, really useful.
I just wanted to add in something that I did when I was teaching primary. I found that the kids found it difficult saying the words or use the correct words. And so if you think this is useful for your school, then by all means use it. There's a YouTube video. I made the YouTube video of some actions I did that I created with the kids, and I found that it made it a lot easier for them to understand the terms, and also I noticed an impact for them to start using it, because what I did is I kind of worked with my year 4 class at the time and created actions that they would understand. So for example, decomposition was based on the idea of building a model out of Lego, and so the action is just literally pulling 2 bricks apart and understanding that you need to break the problem down or break the coding down to understand, you know, and I talked to them about, if you wanted to build a Star Wars within Walkers, how could you go about it if you had a model in front of you and you could sort of break it into bits? And yeah, so I got actually filmed my son doing some of these actions, and it did make a difference because the children began to understand what these words meant, and they weren't using the wrong terms because they used to say editing instead of debugging and things like that. So yeah. Can include the link. If it's helpful, I can include a link to it. But it made a difference in my school, you know, and it was a problem that I saw early on where the children just couldn't verbalise what they were trying to explain, you know. So,
that's really good.
Yeah, me too.
Obviously, Wendy was talking about Barefoot earlier, so if you haven't done workshops, or if maybe your school has done it, but maybe some of your staff haven't done it, I'm more than happy to do it. So you can either book it through me or go onto the website, make sure you sign up if you're not already signed up for it. Like I said, it's completely free, really good resources, and like I said, they're really useful right through up to sixth form as well. So if you know any other teachers that are wanting to do something like that, they just want some quick resources, it's a really good place to go, but I won't go through too much on that because we've talked about that earlier on. One of the things I do really want to push is something that ties in with Barefoot. So whereas the Barefoot is really aimed at the adults, really, so get you guys more confident teaching it. I've recently signed up to become a Digital Schoolhouse, which is another one, but this one's aimed at the kids. And so these are free workshops where you bring students to me, you stay in the classroom and we do kind of team teaching, helping me to see with the students, but I'll lead the session and go through it. And the idea is there are workshops that they're kind of tend to be about 5 to 6 hours long. You won't necessarily come for the whole day because I don't have the full day for it, but what we will have is the resources to then take away for future ICT lessons. that you can then use. And if you're one of the first ones that book up, I do have these cool pens that have got a USB stick on them that I then give the resources on, which is even better. That was one of their gimmicks they did to give us to hand out. And there are some really, really good things. I tried it out last year with one of my year 5 transition days that we had come up. I think it was Eyes that came up to us and brought a year 5 class up. And it's any age of primary school. I'll try and tailor it as young as that you want to bring up to me, that you're brave enough to bring up to secondary school. Then the only thing that you just have to obviously sort out would be the transport to get to us. There are, if you really are struggling with it, there are ways that potentially I could come to you, but then it might mean a shorter session as a result of it. But ideally, because I know my environment a lot more and I know that the resources and the equipment will work, ideally bringing people here is the preferred option. I've got budgets within it that I can sort out some snacks and things, and the students get to hopefully have a little bit of fun with learning something. So, and I can tailor it to topic work as well. So if you tell me that you're doing a certain topic, then I can put in a session and make sure it's working around that, and that can be used to kind of cement what you guys are doing, because a lot of the stuff that the resources are based around is probably what you have to teach anyway. And so these are a little bit like the NCCE resources. They're put together by teachers or ex-teachers, and they're all kind of quality assured as they go through. And so then you just get some resources to say, right, okay, this is the start of it, we're going to carry on, and we're going to do this part, and hopefully you've got 3 or 4 lessons after you've left me that you can then take these ways. So Wednesdays afternoons are the work days that I've got set up. If you want to get involved with it, then just send me an email and I'll get you booked in for one. And I can easily take up to 30 kids at a time. I can potentially look at how I could take a few more if you wanted to bring, if you've got more that you wanted to bring up. But there's nothing to stop you booking as many as you can that I've got spaces for over the course of the year.
I was thinking we do it on like 2 consecutive, but I was thinking my year forecast,
yeah.
like there's 2 lots of 30s.
Yeah. So you could book 2 sessions, 1 for each. That would be not a problem at all. And so there are some really, really good resources. One I did was an encryption activity. So it was quite lucky because I didn't know what they'd been doing in the topic, but we started by talking about hieroglyphics. And so they'd been doing that in the lessons, and they'd been doing a topic on it at the time. So it's quite handy that it actually tied in, but there are lots of links, and like I said, I can try and make extra links in with it as well. And it is really good. Like I said, it's all completely free, and also it kind of ties in with the Barefoot in terms of this is really for the students getting involved and hopefully enjoying some sessions, and then you've got some resources to take away to use later on as well. No, definitely. And one of the last things, because I appreciate we're getting close to the time that I said we'd officially finished, is a competition. And Raspberry Pi have actually just announced that they've teamed up with this week, which is really good. It's a computational thinking competition. We've done it for the last 4 or 5 years, I think, since I've been here. Any student can take part. They don't need any computing knowledge at all, and they don't need to have got any programming experience. It starts next week, so it's a 2-week window, and you can get as many students as you want to get involved with it. There are various rewards and things for the top students, and there's different age categories. I can't remember what the youngest it goes, but it does go into primary school. I think year 3 or 4, it definitely does go down to. And it's just an online set of quizzes, really, and they're all computational thinking based, but not programming based. There are a few scratch type activities, but most of it is how do you get this beaver to this place on the screen, and they just have to talk through the instructions, or they click a button and multiple choices and those sorts of things. And some of the top students, it's normally the top 60 in the country, get invited to Oxford University for a celebration event. And the last 2 years, we've had a student from here go, which has been really good. And they've really, really enjoyed going. And it's there just really to kind of encourage them. There are also, there's another round of competition afterwards that they call the TCS something for someone. There's a load of initials basically, and that's run by Oxford University still. For those that did really well with it but weren't quite in that top 60, they get another chance to go through. And then that round leads to some prizes because Google have got involved with it by that point, and Raspberry Pi were kind of involved with it, and they were giving out some Raspberry Pis and those sorts of things, which can help with kids' enjoyment and that sort of thing. So, it is a really, really good thing. You have to sign up by Thursday if you want to do it, and if you need any help with setting up students so they can have access to it, then again, send me an email and I'll help out and get it sorted. And because I've got to do mine over this weekend, so I can do it next week. But it's really, really good. Nothing. It's 40 minutes. It's a time bit, and they just get on with it really. And you can sit in quiet for about 40 minutes. So even better. So.
That's right, this Thursday.
So yeah, so you have to sign up by this Thursday, and then it's you've got a 2-week window starting on Monday, so then actually get them to do it. So yeah, so feel free to sign up if you've got any questions or need any help with it, then let me know. That's really it for me for today. Apart from, if you could, don't necessarily have to do it now, make a note of the feedback form I've set up. That'll help future sessions, so that I can get those up and running, and we'll look to have another one next half term. And if you can make sure that, I think I put a spot on there about when you can do. Ideally, try and get as many people as come as I can. Hopefully, bring friends, and I've got a few more people that said they just couldn't make this one, which it's quite nice. So next time we show a few more going on, but. If there's certain days that are easier, then try and let me know as well, so that I can try and organise the next one for a day that you can definitely make. I've got a few extra bits as well. Obviously, there's a few stickers. These are the Digital Schoolhouse stickers, so if you want to take some of those to spread the word. And I've also got the prim sheets that I was talking about earlier when I was talking about prim. Those are just the same ones that Wendy has before. I've got, if you want to have a look before you go, there's a little bit about the Digital Schoolhouse and why it's been set up. That sort of thing. If you want to have a quick read through that, that's my official copy, so you can make sure you do read it. And these are other issues of Hello World if you want to have a quick browse through. I think that's the latest one, is it?
July. Yeah.
Yeah, there's an October one that's just come out. So these ones are, again, those ones are mine, so you can just make sure I don't lose those ones, because they've got my post-it. You'll see I've got post-its in there where I've thought, oh, that's a really good idea. Because the thing with Hello World is there's teachers putting articles in there all the time and things that they're trying, and so you can have a look at it and give you some ideas, and it's really good. We did get in one of them as well, because our students did an app that we use at the sixth form, which is really good. And something else, I don't know if anyone's heard of it, is SAMLab. I don't know how good it potentially could be. One of our academies was looking into getting computing, and it's some physical computing. And these are various little building blocks, if you like, where you can have sensors and lights and all sorts of things. There's motors, there's a kind of kit to make a car. My personal view was, because they're aiming at more primary schools, I didn't know whether it was too confusing for some of them, because setting it up can be a bit of a pain. But if you want to have a look at it before you go and see if it's something that you're happy to do, if you've got any comments on it, then I'd be more happy to hear about them. They are quite expensive. I think the classroom set is about £2,000 from what I remember. I think they could be quite good, but I'm not quite sure how well some of the younger students might get on with them, because you've got to be a little bit patient setting them up, because they're all Bluetooth to start off with, and you have to make sure you connect to the right ones. And so if you've got a class of 30 set, and you've got one group here and another group here, they might end up connecting either accidentally or deliberately to the wrong blocks when you're doing it. But there's an iPad app and a Windows app for it that you can do coding on as well. But feel free to have a look at anything, and feel free to take any of the freebies and things that we've got. I'd say as long as you want to chat to people, if you've got any other questions for me or for Wendy, I'm sure we'll do our best to try and help you out. Hopefully you find it useful. Does anyone have any questions at the moment? No one wants to-
Information overload, yeah, sorry.
These are some from, I think this actually came from the plastic bit that we did in London, but there's some examples of what's going on with the next set of Barefoot as well in there if you want to have a look. Again, those are my personal copies, so if you can read those, but I will try to. But help service. So,